sometimes as people, as you said, get influence and power and money and resources and a never-ending supply of people wanting to work for them. I mean, it's why investment banking.
That's right. That's why that's as
that
an industry.
Whole industry gets a sheen of being toxic.
Yeah. And people die.
Yeah.
Like young people die in the offices of some of these investment banking companies because they want it so bad.
Yeah. There'll always be another 1,000 people coming in from the colleges next year who want to make their so many $1 million as a 20-year-old. And you can work them to all hours. You can ask them to basically never go on vacation. You can call them on vacation and all these things. Certainly there are investment bankers out there that have gone through an environment that wasn't toxic. But I think for the investment bankers we've known, they've all described toxic environments. And another toxic environment, in which we know hundreds of people, was the way medical school used to be. And maybe to a certain degree still is.
It has probably some guardrails on, but I'm not sure it has enough guardrails on.
Again, never-ending supply of people who want to go to medical school, big rewards if you make it through, and a long dog-out period, known as residency, and we'll just work them all night. What's the problem? That's how I did it. It's good for them. It was good for me, and all this kind of business. And so you get this, again, how prestige intersects with toxicity sometimes. If you're the steward of an organization that's got a lot of status and has a lot of people who want to do some of the jobs, how are you actually treating those people? There's a place that we work that has a category of people who used to be easy to replace. And so over the years, I don't think the company valued them a lot. And then during the crunch of COVID, they became harder to replace. And it took the company a while to figure it out. And they've had to try to be nicer to that pool of employees because it's interesting. I hadn't put this together until just now. I was talking about this. To the extent that the generational transition from the boomers out of the workforce, a big generation, into Gen X taking up the senior role, basically Gen X now in the senior roles, millennials in the middle, and Gen Z in the entry levels. So you got, instead of big, small, big with boomer, X, or millennial, now you have small, big, small with X, millennial, Z. And to the extent that it's harder to find people to do the jobs, it may tamp down on some of the toxicity that comes from feeling like there will always be an endless supply of labor to take the work. I think about all the jobs that people want, like doing sports jobs. What's another good example? I think the sports ones are a good example. Oh yeah, acting. These jobs where a lot of people want to do them, again, never-ending pipeline, get a lot of toxicity kind of building up.
Yeah, those are like industries that are prepped to be like the organizations inside them are prepped to be toxic.
Yeah.
Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't exceptions.
Sure. And probably many, many, many.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's back to this idea of a lot of times behind something highly prestigious hides, or not even hides, but in plain sight, is bad behavior.
Yeah, in the music and acting Hollywood industry, like the filmmaking industry, I don't think you can even say it's been hidden.
Yeah. I think basically the reason we want to talk about this is to take a pause and remember that not everything that's shiny is shiny all the way through. And some of the times what's shiny is actually a fishing lure, and it's going to hook you. It's going to hurt. It doesn't mean that has to be the case, but be on the lookout for the hottest thing is usually going to have a lot of people that you're competing against, and that's obviously harder, but it also sets up an internal dynamic where there's an endless supply of people, so we don't have to treat our people all that great. And the same thing may be happening at the managerial level.
And I just have to say that it's an example of people not seeing what isn't there. And we talked about this because you had thought about doing a book on similar topics, like seeing what isn't there.
Things we don't think about enough.
Yeah. So it's always a bad idea to have high turnover. It's costly. Like, even if you have a line of people out the door, you should still treat your people well, because it's cheaper to hold your people than it is to have a line out the door that is coming in and jumping in, and you're going to have to train. Again, I think that management is too busy worried about being concerned about their own position, and so they're throwing people under the bus, which means then they have to actually get rid of people. And that means that they're having the turnover. In a sane world, you would actually be looking at turnover and being like, man, this is costing us a ton of money training these people up. It would be far cheaper for us to hold people.
Right.
And get them on the same page and get it right.
Yeah.
These organizations don't have that motivation because people are too busy basically shirking off any of the responsibility for any of the negative.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember a lot of people stereotype about the military from years and years ago is when it was a draft and they would treat so many people out because they could. It's just, you got the whole population to pick from. And then when it switched from being a draft to the volunteer military, I'm exaggerating, but you couldn't lose anybody. Like, these are volunteers, and you can only have volunteers. And so everyone that you didn't keep was a big loss. And that's where a lot of the shift for, I think you could argue that a lot of the boot camp and stuff from back in the day had these toxic elements that we've been talking about, and where now there's a lot more of a developmental. We're going to make you a Marine. We're going to make you a soldier. We're going to make you an airman, etc.
Which, from an efficiency standpoint and a training standpoint, would have always been the ideal.
Hey, they didn't have the benefit of this podcast way back in the day.
And if you're at the top of the organization and this is, you got a turnover problem and you got people in the room who are only really telling you, focusing on harmony, except harmony within the group, but disharmony outside the group. So basically won't ruffle any feathers, but will certainly throw anybody below them under the bus. Then you know that you're a high status organization. You got some problems to think through to try to bring that back and make sure your people feel like, hey, we're not going to fire you just because you bring up a problem that's tough.